Picture this. In the heart of the Caribbean, two powerful leaders are amassing troops and warships, turning up the heat in a standoff that could ignite a full-blown conflict. It's a dramatic scenario involving US President Donald Trump and Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro, and it's unfolding right now. But here's the twist that most people overlook. This isn't just about politics. It's a high-stakes game of brinkmanship where one wrong move could spark international turmoil. Let's dive into the details, breaking it down step by step, so even newcomers to global affairs can follow along. President Trump is seriously considering military interventions in Venezuela, ramping up US forces in the Caribbean region. This includes deploying warships and other advanced equipment. And just this week, he authorized B-52 bombers to soar near Venezuela's coastline. On the other side, Maduro is pushing back hard, redeploying his soldiers, rallying what he calls millions of militia volunteers, and blasting US actions as aggressive meddling, a defiant stance from a leader who's dug in for a showdown. Behind the scenes, Trump's team has privately confirmed that their escalating pressure is designed to force Maduro out of power, echoing efforts from Trump's first term when the US backed opposition figure Juan Guaidó as Venezuela's rightful president back in 2019. As autumn approaches, the administration is turning up the dial, and Maduro is responding with heightened propaganda aimed at his citizens, alongside announcing fresh drills for the Bolivarian National Armed Forces, a military boasting around 123,000 personnel. In the past few weeks, the US Navy has positioned vessels and weapons closer to Venezuela, targeting ships off its shores that intelligence says are smuggling drugs. Then, on Wednesday, Trump revealed he'd greenlit the CIA for secret operations in Venezuela, hinting at possible ground strikes. "We're definitely eyeing land options now, since we've got the seas locked down," he told reporters. For beginners, think of this as the US not just patrolling, but potentially getting boots on the ground to disrupt threats. Maduro counters by claiming his citizen militias have swelled to over 8 million reservists, though analysts question these figures and the effectiveness of their training. By October 17, 20 of Venezuela's 23 states were under military lockdown as part of his Independence 200 mobilization. Trump even poked fun at a video on Truth Social, showing women in militia drills who seemed out of shape, wielding guns. A light-hearted jab that highlighted the absurdity for some. The US has been quietly preparing for this by linking Maduro to drug cartels, labeling them as terrorist organizations posing immediate dangers to America. And this is the part most people miss. While there's no word yet on Trump ordering direct hits on Maduro, the aim is to pressure him to resign voluntarily by making a credible military threat loom large. Recent strikes on suspected drug vessels in the Caribbean send a clear signal, deliberately connecting Maduro to these criminal networks. Trump clarified on Wednesday that the CIA's role is to curb migrant and drug flows from Venezuela, but he didn't confirm plans to oust Maduro. This marks his most detailed comments on expanding CIA powers for deadly operations and covert missions, which CNN reported last week. In response, Maduro railed against the CIA's history of overthrowing governments in a TV address. Yet our citizens stand firm, bonded, and informed. They possess the tools to thwart this blatant plot against our nation's peace and security, he declared on state TV. Despite the war drums, life in Venezuela carries on. Downtown Caracas saw a packed musical debut at the Teresa Carreño Theater, and just days earlier, over 1,000 salsa enthusiasts danced at a party in the city's west. But fear is palpable. People are buzzing about US ships in the Caribbean and the dread of an invasion. Venezuelans are on edge, fretting over what could unfold, shared Yvonne Caña, a local cook. She admits to stockpiling extra groceries out of concern for her family, especially since sleepless nights are the norm. Some Venezuelans are cautiously cheering the US pressure on Maduro. Banners proclaiming, "It's coming, freedom at 95%, have popped up on at least 10 campuses, a rare, peaceful dissent in spaces where politics is risky due to government crackdowns. Meanwhile, Maduro has tightened his grip, issuing a state of external commotion decree in late September, framing it as a constitutional shield against foreign aggression. This could let him suspend rights and seize sweeping powers over politics, society, and the economy. As Maduro accuses the U.S. of eyeing Venezuela's oil riches, American forces have drawn nearer. On Wednesday, 3 B-52 bombers lingered off the coast for over 4 hours, per flight tracking data. 2 entered Venezuela's Flight Information Region, FIR. That's the airspace zone a country controls for aviation, even if it's international waters, and came as close as 53 miles to La Orchila Island, where Maduro's troops recently drilled. At their nearest, they were 132 miles from the mainland, around 11:20 a.m. local time, all within Venezuela's FIR, which extends beyond its territorial borders. Sources indicate these boat strikes are the start of a broader campaign to dismantle drug trafficking in the region and possibly unseat Maduro. The U.S. has conducted at least 6 attacks on separate vessels so far. The claim that traffickers threaten Americans directly underpins the Trump administration's secret legal rationale for these strikes, and potentially more. A Justice Department memo includes a confidential list of groups treatable as enemy combatants, eligible for summary execution by presidential order, without trials. Legal scholars note this could enable an endless war against undisclosed targets, providing cover for unilateral U.S. actions across the area. Inside the Pentagon, some lawyers, including those specializing in international law, have voiced worries about the strike's legality. But past talks with CNN suggest internal objections won't halt the administration's push. The latest sign of friction came Thursday when the admiral heading U.S. Southern Command, responsible for Caribbean forces, announced his early retirement after just a year. Tensions between Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Admiral Alvin Halsey had been building. Hegseth felt the admiral wasn't aggressive enough against traffickers and was withholding info, while Southern Command fretted over the operation's lawfulness. Then Friday, the U.S. military captured 2 survivors from its 6th boat strike, the first time not everyone was killed, and they're now held on a Navy ship. CNN reports, adding more legal gray areas to an already complicated situation. But here's where it gets controversial. Is this legal justification for killing suspected criminals without due process a slippery slope toward unchecked power? Critics argue it blurs the line between criminal justice and warfare, potentially justifying assassinations globally. On the flip side, supporters might see it as necessary to combat a real threat from cartels that fund violence and drugs flowing into the U.S. And what about Maduro's mobilization? Does it show strength or desperation? Could this lead to a regime change that stabilizes Venezuela, or does it risk a bloody quagmire? As we unpack this tense standoff, one thing's clear. The Caribbean is a powder keg, and the world is watching. Do you support Trump's approach to pressuring Maduro, or do you see it as imperial overreach? Is Maduro's defiance a legitimate stand against foreign interference, or a dictator's last gasp? And should drug cartels really be treated like terrorists with lethal force? Share your opinions in the comments. Let's discuss.